Steve, it takes guts to drop out like you did.
Higher education comes at the expense of experience.
Boss!
What are you working on?
It's a computer terminal that hooks up to the TV for the display. Steve? Wow. These are state of the art. Nobody's making anything like this.
All right, okay.
Welcome to Apple Computer.
Is this everything?
Startup.
I think we should start with around 90 grand.
Could you repeat that?
All right, we're here at the Dallas premiere of Jobs, and we're very excited to see you guys. We're here with Josh Gad and Joshua Michael Stern, and we saw you guys at Sundance, and we're proud to see the way this movie has progressed since then, and it's finally out in theaters. So
You're all you want is for that moment to come where it's just out there.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's a terrifying moment because you're like giving your baby to the world.
Yeah, and it's always a miracle when a movie gets made. I mean, that's what they always say. And especially a movie like this, which is an independent. It's such a crowded field with tent poles coming out. It's really a movie about, you know, relationships and about a man with a vision. It's a small movie, but it also has huge implications. So you want to compete, and you know, and you put a lot of care into it. So you're nervous, but you're nervous, like you said, like as if you'd be nervous seeing your child go off to school. It really is that same amount of anxiety, wanting to be perfect.
yeah. And what did you think when you first, you got a script from Dallas, which is not where you usually find a big Hollywood movie script coming from?
I was surprised. I got called by Mark Holm, and he put me on a plane, and I flew out to Dallas, and I read the script, which was 200 pages at the time, and I thought I couldn't put it down, and it was a situation where I had to do it, you know. And as crazy as it seemed that this guy was going to be doing it outside the Hollywood system, I knew that I had to go on board and try to get as many people as I could to join the party, you know. I was excited.
Yeah, and then of course you have, well actually I gotta ask you, Josh, because you're playing a living character.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Ashton's playing Steve, who's no longer with us, but you're playing someone that could equally comment on...
And does equally.
He does every day.
Doesn't waste a moment of
Yes.
commenting, as a matter of fact. No, I to me, the one, it's been the greatest gift in the world to portray Steve Wozniak. I have the utmost respect for that man. Fell in love with him long before the making of the movie, just because I admired the hell out of the work that he's done. But then the discovery of going through his autobiography, or going through the Isaacson book, and delving into all of the footage that's out there. As you say, these are people that are in the public spotlight where there is an amazing amount of both visual and audio footage that exists. So it's not like you can fake it, because that comparison is readily available to the public.
But I think that his portrait is a very loving, sympathetic, wonderful portrait of Wozniak. I think that when he sees it, he'll quibble, but I think he'll be taken by the movie and really feel like we did him justice, or as if we did a sort of homage to the spirit of what he stood for and who he was as a person, because he was a wonderful person, and is.
Of course. Well, and also Ashton does such a fantastic job, and I think you saw that at Sundance when people were standing up in the audience during the Q&A and saying, "I knew Steve Jobs," and you nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Josh can speak more on this, but to me, as an actor, Ashton set the tone for the film, in that his level of commitment to this character, to creating this world, to telling this story that's very important to many people out there, was unmatched in any of my career trajectory from any TV or film or stage work that I've done. He was so unbelievably committed to telling this story as accurately as possible that all of us had to jump on board, because you'd be just left in the dust.
And when I walked into that first meeting with him, he walked in, it was a master class on how you get a role, because he knew that I'd have to leave that meeting with evidence that he could do the role. He'd have to present Steve to me so that I would know that he could do Steve. And so from the very first meeting, he'd already done so much research. And even the walk and the mannerisms and the sort of idiosyncrasies, the gait, these are all things that if you knew Steve, you'd recognize. Of course, the general public won't recognize that, but he put so much time, and so did Josh. I mean, Josh really he kind of created and drew out the arc of Wozniak as who he was when he was younger and what happens to him and even his vocal pattern as he got older and how did he sort of get internalized. And for me, though I've never really sort of talked to Josh too much about this, Woz was like the fool in Lear. He was sort of observed. He was like Steve's consciousness and was always there, but sort of served as the counterpoint to Steve's obsessive drive to look forward. He was always a reminder of the past, but also a reminder of where his heart was and what was good about his life.
When people ask you about this movie years from now, what is
know
it
what
that
your
you're
answer is
remember?
going to be. For me, I would have to say that going back to Steve's childhood garage where they built the original Apple I was the most surreal experience. That was the first week of shooting, and it set the tone for the rest of the film. And I remember a day where I guess one of the set designers came up to me and was like, I just found this lying around, not sure where to put it. And I go, oh, what is it? You go, it's Steve's childhood journals. I mean, it was all still there in the attic. Like all of this stuff that this man, that was basically, would amount to the greatness that we all saw was forming in this home, in this garage. And there was something very, there's something incredibly spiritual and incredibly exciting about that.
Well, and this film has been referred to by several people as inspirational. And is that what you were hoping for? Because
I like to be involved with projects that move the needle a little bit. And this is a movie about a guy who had a lot of faults. He had a lot of strange idiosyncrasies and a lot of people who doubted him and also who misunderstood him. But he wanted something and he strove to do it and make it happen for himself. And I think in a world where sort of there's a new norm and people are doing the same job with less, that the general public is called to look within themselves to create things on their own now. And I think it's a movie that hopefully gets people to dream and to think about that business or that thing they've always wanted to do and try it and go for it and just be obsessed with it enough that you'll get there. And people will join your train if you have that thought. And I think that's what Steve said, he said at one point at the end of the film, he said, when you wake up and realize that the world was created by people no smarter than you, that you really, when you can release yourself from the daunting task of being intimidated by everything around you and just create things, that's a good moment and an important moment.
Yeah. Now the show is the Drew Pearson Show, and Drew famously caught the Hail Mary catch, and I think everyone in their life has a Hail Mary moment where they just had to go for it, and it didn't look like it was going to work out, but it did. What do you suppose that was in your lives?
I think that Hail Mary catch for me was probably the Book of Mormon, just in that it was the right place, right time kind of situation where I was getting a lot of these opportunities that started to feel redundant and safe. And a lot of people were advising me not to go and do this other thing that was strange and foreign and controversial, and why bring that kind of attention to yourself. And so I kind of jumped into that volcano and allowed myself to ride that eruption. And it was the most fulfilling, moment of my life, artistically.
And you got a Tony nomination. Good. And for you?
Well, to me, honestly, of everything I've done, it's this film, because there were so many things stacked against it.
I want to ask about the actual story being that it's only a certain time period.
Yeah.
It doesn't lead up to Steve's death, and it doesn't lead up to the the iPhone or the iPad or any of those things that we know. And was that partially your decision as well?
Well, I think to some extent the writer and I made that decision. We've already got a movie that's 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Most studios would have liked it to be 15 minutes, lighter, an hour and 50. And I think the most interesting story to me was the prehistory, was the origin story, this is an origin story. It's about a guy. It's about everything up until the moment where he created the iMac.